browser vendors really mean well. What they're doing is looking out for the users. And we know that today, one of the big engines of the economy is the ability of advertisers to profile people, even without their knowledge or consent, so that they can serve high-performing ads. And a lot of this tracking occurs by using low-level primitives in the browser, such as cookies, redirects, decorated links. And so browser vendors are trying to put a stop to this by inhibiting some of this functionality in particular scenarios, or sometimes without a lot of discrimination, just like eliminating entire categories of features. Unfortunately, identity, in particular federated identity, is built on the same building blocks that are used by the advertisers. And so the outcome is that any actions that is against the tracking, that it does not really understand the difference between ad tracking and federated identity, will affect federated identity scenario. And so that's basically what's going on right now. The short-term impact of these can be quite painful for a number of customers. Let's say that some changes already went in production. So the famous intelligent tracking protection in Safari, and the same site, different defaults in Chrome, and the plans that Chrome had to eliminate completely third-party cookies, which now luckily has been delayed by a couple of years. And the outcome of those is that entire scenarios can just stop working. So if, for example, you have a web application which runs mostly on JavaScript and executes code in the browser, and it relies on the ability to access third-party cookies to get tokens out of band instead of actually showing redirects to the user, then applications might actually be unable to get those tokens in the background. And so the experience of the user would be disrupted. And the same goes for a distributed logout. You log out from one app expecting that you'll be logged out from all the apps that are using the same identity provider, but it might not happen. You might end up being logged out only from one app, but still be logged in the other apps. And those are short-term consequences. There are medium-term consequences which can be far more severe. Like there are talks about introducing features that will limit the way in which browsers can redirect. And that will potentially break SAML, which is extraordinarily adopted, like a lot of critical infrastructure relies on SAML. And the moment in which those changes would occur, given that SAML is basically done, it's not dead because people are using it, but it's done. There is no longer innovation. If they impose changes that would require products to change the way in which they do SAML, we'd be in big trouble because a lot of websites, institutions, universities would just stop working. The long-term consequences are more nuanced. One of the things that we as industry are trying to do with browser vendors and identity providers and identity vendors and similar is to devise a new class of primitives that allow the browser to do identity explicitly. Instead of using low-level primitives like cookies and redirects, we could offer APIs that do identity. The challenge with that is that if you go too high in the abstraction layers, you end up with something which is very inflexible. And as we know, through the history of how identity came to be on the internet, we need what we call permissionless innovation, as in the ability to devise new scenarios starting from flexible primitives. If your primitives are not very flexible because they address specific scenarios, you can address today's scenarios, but there is no guarantee you'll be able to address tomorrow's scenario. And so we need to strike this balance, and if we fail to do so, we might actually significantly hamper innovation. The absolute best way is to get involved. We've been talking with the browser vendors for a couple of years at this point, as separate entities, like separate companies. And this isn't very efficient. And also, it's not very exhaustive because we all have identity operators in the industry have a different perspective, different use cases. So we've been working in collaboration with the W3C to create a tent, a forum where we can all come together at the table and discuss our scenarios and contribute all our points of view. And it's a community group in the W3C called the FedID, the Federated Identity. And the best way is really to participate. So to join the group, join the calls, participate in the discussion so that we can move this aspect of identity and browsers forward together.